Hello, assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, everyone's doing well. Today, I want to make a video continuing on my discussion on faith in Islam, particularly as it relates to the sound heart and how to achieve this sound heart, which, of course, as you know, inshallah, by now, that what I'm talking about is faith, the deeper levels of faith, where the heart is transformed as a result. So without further ado, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. So one of the important points or takeaway from the last video prior to this one is the idea that faith, when we talk about this more specific aspect of faith, we're looking at faith at its more deeper level than just mere belief in God. And we recognize there that there is a light in which the God expands the human heart. And this expansion of the heart really gives us the ability to understand and see and know ourselves and or the world in which we live in and have a deeper connection with God. So that's kind of where we need to be in terms of moving forward from. Now, in chapter 2, verse 2 to verse 4, the Quran says, "This is the book. In it is guidance sure, without doubt a guidance for the reverent, who believe in the unseen, are steadfast in prayer, and spend out of what we have provided them, and who believe in the revelation sent to the Prophet Muhammad, and sent before thy time previous prophets like Prophet Jesus, Prophet Moses, Yusuf, etc., etc. And in their hearts have the certainty of the hereafter." Now, once again, we could say that anyone who believes in Islam or any one of the monotheistic faiths, we can say, yes, this verse is saying these people believe in the unseen, they keep up prayer, yes, they believe in God's revelation, and they also believe in a hereafter. So the meaning of this refers to them. But once again, it has also a very hidden, more deeper meaning in that when God says, "and in their hearts have the certainty of thereafter," it's including those people who have reached the deeper levels of faith, right? Where there is a certainty in their hearts without a doubt, okay? They know this to be true. They don't merely believe this to be true. They know it to be true. Now, the study Quran, it translates the word reverent as muttaqin, which broadly is rendered as taqwa, and taqwa conveys a sense of fear, mindfulness, and a constant awareness of God's presence and power. Now, so in other words, when God says, "This is the book, in it is guidance without doubt for people, guidance for the reverent," when we look at what this word means, it means those people who have a great sense of fear in their hearts, a mindfulness about them, and a constant awareness of God's presence and power. This is not the average Muslim, and it's not the average believer we're talking about here. It does to some extent include them, but it's referring really to the foremost amongst them. Now, in Al-Mizan, which is a voluminous and prestigious Islamic Quranic tafsir, one that is held in high regard, it says that the word believe is rendered in this verse, right, as al-iman. And al-iman, of course, is a word that means to believe, or in English, it's translated as faith. Now, al-iman, it says, it comes from the root word al-amn, meaning safety, to feel safe, okay? So, according to this interpretation, and I quote Al-Mizan, it says that the believer, by his belief and faith, gains safety from doubts. Okay? Safety from doubts. What then am I essentially trying to say is that the reverent and those who believe in the unseen are steadfast in their prayer, and who believe in the revelation and have the assurance in their hearts includes, yes, the general believers, but it also is pointing to a specific type of believer who are foremost amongst them, right? They have a deep and a constant awareness of God's presence and power, okay? And as a result of their faith, right, unlike the condition of a heart that is wretched with misery and doubt and ignorance and an inability to see and understand the realities of its own soul and its connection with the Creator, this type of person is freed from all those sorts of things. In fact, the opposite is true. And when we look at how they're defined by this word, they're defined by a word that refers to people who feel safe. They're actual in themselves. They feel safe from any potential punishment in this life or the next. And more importantly, they don't have any doubts about God. They're actually people who have an assurity or a certitude about them when it comes to the Creator. A poem from Rumi that goes as follows. The sun casts light on things, and through that light it is possible to see. The purpose of light is to see. And so what this poem tells us and confirms is exactly what the Quran has told us, which is that this light, God says that is this light that we have bestowed upon this type of person, the light whereby he is able to walk amongst men, similar to the ignorance that that the unbeliever is plagued by in the depths of darkness. Rumi says no, they aren't the same. In fact, he says that the sun casts light on things, and through that light it is possible to see, and says that the purpose of light, as a result of this analogy he makes, is to be able to see. And of course the Quran shows us this ability to see by the metaphor of a man who is given light, and thereby he's able to walk amongst men. So to see, therefore, means to have certainty of knowledge of all things, including knowledge of the names. Okay? And we will talk about knowledge of the names later on, because this is an aspect of the quality of the vicegerent in which human beings, for which human beings were created. just a little bit more about this idea of light. So in the Quran, chapter 24, verse 34 to 38, Allah says that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, light upon light. Allah doeth guide whom He will to His light. Lit is such a light in houses which Allah hath permitted to be raised to honor. For the celebration in them of His name, in them He is glorified in the mornings and evenings by men whom neither traffic nor merchandise can divert from the remembrance of Allah, nor from regular prayer, nor from the practice of regular charity. So this light Allah has associated with Himself, the same light that enters and penetrates the heart and expands the heart. Okay? The light of faith. So there's a connection then between the absorption of this light within the human heart and the connection with the presence of God. Okay? So we can, in very simple terms, say that this light really is an infusion of the presence of God. Okay? And God says that this light is associated with the type of person who is engaged in the religious virtues of prayer, remembrance, and whom regular charity, etc., where they're not associated with the trafficking of merchandise. That's not, these things, in fact, cannot divert them from the virtue, the religious virtues that God has underlined here in this verse. And as a result, God says that He has honored the homes of such people. What's interesting, though, is that there is another verse in chapter 22, verse 40 to 41, in which God says, "Did not Allah check one set of people by means of another through jihad, or war? There would have surely been pulled down monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques, in which the name of God is commemorated in abundant measure. They are those who, if we establish them in the land, establish regular prayer and give regular charity and enjoin the right and forbid the wrong." Now, the word "they," or the reference to "they," here the verse is talking about the believers who formed the community at the time of the prophet. And the verse is saying that if God gave them the victory, right, if God gave them victory through jihad, that they would establish, right, centers where God's name is commemorated, and they would perform the prayer regularly. They would join charity and not just in a fiscal sense, but certainly charity in their behavior, in their mindset, in the way they ordered their societies, and that they would enjoin right and forbid evil. Now, this same verse is identical with the verse I just read, so verse 24, 34 to 38, which says, "Lit is such a light in houses which Allah hath permitted to be raised to honor by men whom neither traffic nor merchandise can divert." And this verse, much like the last verse I just read, ends with the similar refrain in which God points out that such men whom God's light has been lit, right, they are of those who practice remembrance of Allah, regular prayer, and regular charity as well. So these verses are referring to essentially the same type of person, whether the person is fighting jihad or whether the person has achieved a level of inner faith where this light is lit in their houses, right? Of course, the house is a metaphor for the heart, or it could also mean that while they have attained this light in their hearts, their practice of prayer and charity has honored their houses. So these two verses, the one that refers to pull down monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques, of course, like I said, refers to the outer jihad. Of course, refers to those Muslims who God uses in instances of war, while the former refers to the concept of inner jihad, in which the verse is talking about light upon light, which of course is a metaphor for the attainment of inner faith, which brings certainty to the heart. Yet both these two different verses are two sides of what it means to be fundamentally Muslim. So to do jihad, or to fight in the way of Allah and to establish His religion by preserving the centers of worship within society where His name is preserved, as well as the religious virtues of prayer, charity, and worship on the one hand, and on the other, at the individual level, the light of faith shines through, lit within the breasts and homes of such men and women whose personal spiritual achievement is recognized and is honored by Allah. So to sum all of that together, what am I ultimately trying to say? I'm trying to say that while there is a general idea of faith, this word that we use when we talk about Islam or the religion of Islam, or whether we take the word faith to mean in the very specific instance of the inner light that penetrates the heart, God is showing us to both these two verses that the one leads to the other, that you cannot have it's rare that you can have a society that's not concerned with preserving the centers of worship and the religious virtues, which ultimately is responsible for producing people of faith in every sense of the word, especially in the deepest sense of the word, where God has said that, yes, this light of His, right, that penetrates the heart, it enters the heart of certain men and women, and those men and women, He honors their homes. But God says that if He were to establish the community at the time of the messenger of Allah, the Muslims of that time, He says that they would establish these centers of worship, that they would be a people who would engage in regular prayer and all the religious virtues of charity and enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong. And that the fact that He has in both verses reiterated that they are both occupied with the same things, which is remembrance of God, enjoining what is right, prayer, charity. He's saying essentially that these are the same people, one in the instance of those who fight outwardly to protect religion, but those who also fight inwardly to achieve this inner faith, that they're both one and the same. And that's really important to understand when we talk about faith, both from a general standpoint, to mean, of course, that we're talking about Islam as the religion, and the effects of the religion in terms of the more specific benefits that result or accrue to those who practice it faithfully and achieve this inner dimension of faith that I'm, of course, trying to draw your attention to. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope that you will join me in the following video. Assalamu alaikum and take care for now.